Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome you to my coaching club. I guess we would call this an online book review. I'm also going to attach the written version of this, as I may skip over a few things. But basically, what I did this month was read the book called In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan. And I'm going to give you an idea on what the take-homes were, what's going to really be helpful to you in application, and really just why you ought to listen to this. It's a great book to read, but most of you guys have probably started a million books like me and not finished them. So I'm going to help give you the Cliff Notes version. Remember Cliff Notes from high school? You go buy the Cliff Notes for a few bucks and pay somebody to give you the what you need to know kind of thing. So I'm going to help keep you in the know without spending, what is it, about 8 hours to read a book this long or 7 hours to hear the audio. So if my eyes kind of go back and forth, it's just because I'm using some notes here because I want to read some quotes to you and things like that. So hang tight for 1 second. I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. So once again, it's called In Defense of Food, an Eater's Manifesto. I thought that was a kind of a fun name. On the cover of the book is a head of what looks like red leaf lettuce. And that's one of those things that, obviously, if you've been listening to me for a while, I'm a big fan of eating whole foods, especially in their raw form. I'm going to pick a few pages in the book to read. And first of all, I'm going to quote a lot of things from this book. So this isn't necessarily going to be my opinion. I'll tell you what it is. So if I'm reading something that sounds factual, this is based on the author's facts and his references and things like that. Today in America, the food culture is changing more than once a decade. What is driving such relentless change in the American diet? One force is a $32 billion food marketing machine that thrives on change for its own sake. One of the biggest changes in food culture happened in the 1960s. Science decided that animal fat was a deadly substance. The latest science was raving about hydrogenated vegetable oils, which right now are the same ones we're learning can be very toxic and deadly, the good old-fashioned trans fats. A side note about hydrogenated oils, manufacturers basically take what used to be a waste oil, I think like a cottonseed and a linseed oil and things like that, that are a lot of times were byproducts of food manufacturing, and they dump them. Well, what they found out is if they take those same oils and heat them hot enough, they would hydrogenate, meaning hydrogen atoms would stick to the molecule, creating more hydrogen, hydrogenation. And for some reason, it would actually make the food more stable, more textured. It gives it that nice creamy flavor. And then we add some synthetic flavors to it, and there you go. You got great filler food that could sit on a package until your grandchildren are old enough to eat it. Okay, enough side note here. This gives oil a stable and creamy profile, ready to pump into packaged shelf foods. Shelf foods. I don't know if food is going to do it justice, but things that go on a shelf that you can eat. I'm not saying you should eat them. Here's one of the most powerful statements of the book, and I quote, "All of our uncertainties about nutrition should not obscure the plain fact that the chronic diseases that now kill most of us can be traced directly to the industrialization of our food. The rise of highly processed foods and refined grains, the use of chemicals to raise plants and animals in huge monocultures, the superabundance of cheap calories of sugar and fat produced by modern agriculture, and the narrowing of the biological diversity of the human diet to a tiny handful of staple crops, notably corn, wheat, and soy. These changes have given us the Western diet that we take for granted. Lots of processed foods and meats, lots of added fat and sugar, lots of everything except vegetables, fruits, and whole grains." In 1938, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act imposed strict rules requiring the word imitation appear on any food product that was, well, an imitation. So if it was an imitation of a certain food, they had to label it imitation. Basically, if a food resembled a standardized food but did not comply to the nutritional standard of that food, then it must be labeled imitation. This is huge because it meant that you didn't have to pass off a cheap fake. Somehow in the early 70s, the FDA repealed the law. It buried the existing law into some new guidelines on food labeling, and poof, we now have the world of fake, low-fat products. Fat in our sour cream and yogurt could now be hydrogenated oils. or guar gum, carrageenan. Bacon bits could now be little pieces of dried up soy protein. The cream in whipped cream could now be, or also the coffee creamers. Basically, there's no cream anymore. The cream could actually be replaced with cornstarch, and the yolks of liquefied eggs that were a huge staple for foods with fat and cream in them way back now could be replaced with whatever those scientists in those food laboratories could come up with. And many of our youth have been brought up on inferior quality nutrition being passed on as healthy. We all know that. The 1977 and 1983 dietary guidelines were simplified as follows: eat more low-fat foods. And that is precisely what we did. Remember the low-fat craze? Rice cakes, pretzels, bread, licorice vines. I remember I worked at Costco all the way through college, and I remember the big, huge Costco-size pretzels fat-free, and red vines were fat-free. So if you didn't eat fat, you wouldn't get fat, right? As long as it was fat-free. Obviously, we know now that didn't quite work out. Something the book talks about is the Mediterranean diet we hear so much about. The Mediterranean diet is widely believed to be one of the most healthful traditional diets ever, yet much of what we know about it is based on studies of people living in the 1950s on the island of Crete, which is a Greek island. People who in many respects led lives very different from our own. Yes, they ate a lot of olive oil and more fish than meat, but they also did way more physical labor. As followers of the Greek Orthodox Church, they fasted frequently. They ate lots of wild greens, which basically were weeds. And perhaps most significant, they ate far fewer calories than we did. So more physical exercise, less calories, more wild whole foods. We seem to only add the things we like about other cultures' secrets. However, it seems like we don't adopt some of the unfavorable things like fasting, manual labor, working less hours, having less. We kind of trade a peaceful lifestyle in a lot of ways for the luxuries we have. That wasn't the author's, that was mine. I love the chapter entitled The Aborigine in All of Us. In the summer of 1982, a group of 10 middle-aged Aborigines living in settlements near the town of Derby, Western Australia, agreed to participate in an experiment to see if temporarily reversing the process of westernization they had undergone might also reverse their health problems. 7 weeks. They isolated them, got them away from refined food, Western lifestyle. Blood was drawn after 7 weeks, and there were striking improvements in virtually every area of health. This is what impressed me. On average, they lost 17.9 pounds each in only 7 weeks. The last part of the book was dedicated to eating food. I proposed some practical ways to separate and defend real food from the cascade of food-like products that now surround and confound us, especially in the supermarket. Here are some of the main ways to eat real food. Avoid food products that make health claims. Pretty self-explanatory. If it's making a health claim, it's probably good marketing. Beware. Not that you can't make health claims about food, but typically when you're marketing those things, it's a business. Eat meals. No more of this eternal snacking. According to a culinary study, ages 18 to 50, if you fall in that category, roughly 20% of all your eating occurs in the car. And to be honest with you, I'm guilty of that quite a bit. This morning I had an apple in the car. I went to lunch for a meeting and had a little thing of raw walnuts and almonds in the car. And to be honest, 2 out of the 3 times I ate today were in the car. I guess I'm an overachiever. That's 67%. Eat at the table, not your desk. I did not eat at my desk today, but typically I will eat my apple at the desk or whatever I brought. I eat more than an apple, trust me. If you guys saw me, I'm not a bird. Don't get your fuel from the same place your car gets its fuel from. That's one of my favorites. AM, PM, 76 station, all those kind of things. If you're buying your food there, you might have some problems. Try not to eat alone, because you know what loneliness does to our appetite. Consult your gut. Ask your gut. It's kind of a goofy thing, but when your gut's about 80% full, say, gut, are you full? And if it says, I could eat a little bit more, you probably ought to take a break. And if you're lucky, your brain will kick in, your hormones will kick in, your glucose will kick in, and your cravings will stop. We've all heard this: eat slowly, chew your food well. Cook your own food. And I love the last thing he says in here: plant a garden, because there's something about eating your own vegetables and herbs that you grow in your garden. Lastly, here's the take home of the book for me. And this is actually, I'll leave you with the opening lines of the book. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. That more or less is a short answer to the supposedly incredibly complicated and confusing question of what we humans should eat in order to be maximally healthy. So that concludes my book review from Michael Pollan called In Defense of Food. Great read, and I really hope to continue to bring great data, and the next book review will come a month from today, and thank you for being part of my coaching program. You have a great night or day or morning whenever you're watching this, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me comments or feedback at drshawnpatterson@gmail.com. Have a terrific day. Bye-bye.